It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is brought to you by Amori. How was your first Christmas without your mom? How was your wedding day without your dad? If you know the pain of losing someone you deeply loved, Amori is for you. Amori is a digital time capsule that helps you reflect on mortality, navigate emotions, and create heartfelt messages for your children, so you can feel prepared and let your presence be felt through life's many moments, even when you're no longer here. Let your words become a source of strength and comfort for those you leave behind. Tomorrow isn't promised, but your love can be. Download your mortality companion today at amori.life. That's AMORI.life, and use the code WhenWeDie50 for 50% off. Welcome back to an all-new episode of When We Die Talks. This past week, I've been stuck on an idea from the last episode. This tension of living for someday. It cuts right to the heart of what I'm trying to do with this project, for you and for myself. How do we take greater appreciation for today, living in the moment, while also knowing we'll likely, though not guaranteed, live into our 70s or 80s and have to prepare for that? It's a paradox, but the first step is just being aware of it. So as you listen this week, I invite you to sit with that question, and if it stirs something in you, I'd love to hear it. Getting into today's call, our caller is someone who works closely with grief and death in her own community. And although we start off with big picture ideas, it moves into a story around losing her brother recently. She talks about what it meant to walk him through the dying process and the strange beauty and humor that showed up along the way. From morphine jokes to frozen chicken to signs in the sky, it's a conversation about love, loss, and the beauty that we can find in death. One piece I especially loved, and I'm glad that we discussed, we talked about planning for death. It's something many people avoid, but it matters. Knowing and letting your loved ones know what you want done with your body and where you want your remains to go. These conversations are uncomfortable, but they make all the difference, and I hope it helps you start considering those things. Lastly, before we dive in, instead of ending with a voicemail like the last few weeks, this episode closes with a special remembrance. Now, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh my gosh, it's going for sure. I think that, it's just hilarious because there's just like moments where you're like, there's no coincidences with what the timing is bringing us. So it's like perfect timing right now.
Awesome. I'm glad that we could finally make this happen. I know I had to cancel on you once and then you had some stuff going on. So it's all working out finally.
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Well, is your day going well and everything?
It's been a lot today. I'm usually the person that is holding a lot of grief for other people, and I let myself in the Safeway aisle with like all of the string cheeses in front of me, just like let myself bawl.
Awesome.
So it was great. And I live in a small city, but everybody knows everyone. And yeah, it was interesting to watch other people witness me because I would normally not let myself do that, but I've been really softening into my vulnerability. So I got to learn sometime.
Totally. I'm glad that you were able to have that moment because I feel like so many of us aren't able to do that, whether we want to or not. It's just that judgment and that fear. So I'm glad that you were able to have that moment for yourself. I'm so proud of you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so proud of me too. It was great.
Awesome. I love that. And I feel like that's probably going to fit in with this conversation, but maybe before we fully get into kind of the big question and see where that goes, I'm curious maybe just briefly why you even wanted to do this call. No?
The brief overview.
Yeah.
Well, so I myself have been working on this project that deals with allowing people to share some stories about grief and death and their experience. The idea behind it was having it be anonymous, and they would just either snail mail or email.
Oh, super cool. So we're kind of doing similar things a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And when I had found you, I literally did anonymous dying podcast And then you popped up on my Instagram feed and
So
I was
wild.
like, oh, hell yes. I loved it.
I love that you're doing that. I love that you found this project. I'm super excited to check out your project. So before we get into the full-on conversation, maybe you can let us know like the state that you're calling from and then your favorite book and why.
Yeah, no, totally. I have no problem with being like, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at.
Cool.
Just to like kind of paint a picture. I'm in Juneau, Alaska.
Awesome.
The state capital. And like you said, a book.
Yeah, your favorite book and why.
So like the first thing that comes to mind when you say favorite book, I'm already like, oh gosh. I'm going to say lately because I always tap into this book, any of the poetry from Charles Bukowski.
Okay.
There's not a specific book because I do have like, you know, Bukowski's collections of all his poems in like one big book.
Okay.
But when I think about like a book that will always come up or in moments where I'm like, I need something, that is kind of the book that's like around or in that time frame where I'm like, okay, we got to go into Bukowski now. So
I love that.
Yeah, I would say of like just a collective poems of Charles Bukowski.
Sweet.
Oh, and then Mary Oliver comes out too. So I just poetry book.
I love that. So now we can get into the big question, you know, what do you think happens when we die?
Oh my gosh, yes. What comes up for me, because I've had death just kind of hold me since childhood. I go back into like my most impactful death that happened to me when I was 9 years old. And it kind of occurred to me as I got older that I didn't really fully understand when my brother had told me that his ex-fiance had died. He didn't say she had died. He had said, she's not coming back. And I realized that I didn't understand that because my body was feeling her. Like my body felt her energy. And it wasn't until I got into a lot of somatic work that I realized like, wow, not only is our Western way of like, and this is obviously my perception, like our Western way and like colonized, capitalistic, like patriarchal way of death has left us into more of a thinking than it is a feeling. And I feel like because of energy, right? Like I feel like we have been losing our intuition within our own wisdom of our bodies. And any time I had been around or even had heard somebody had died, I could still feel their energy. So I think that the vessel itself is obviously gone and it's doing its own thing, but the impact of the person's energy and essence is in everything that we've known them to be and like their legacies with things. But even in that feeling of like going back into the earth and back into their surroundings, it's a very energetic, like they're still around. And when I was thinking of the question at hand, when I had first found you, I was like, oh, that's easy. Like we go back into energy again. Like,
totally.
We go back into, you know, like these recipes, we go back into walking outside and seeing a hummingbird or like whatever the person associates with the person or thing or, you know, animal that has left. I just feel like that's what surrounds us after the vessel is gone.
It is like something that comes up a lot, this kind of energetic, which I think totally makes sense. And so I've come up with a follow-up question because it's interesting to think about of like, okay, so if we do just kind of go back to this energy, do you still maintain individuality? Or do you feel like it's just kind of like going back to the collective consciousness? And I feel like I'm kind of trying to get at it, like, do you feel like you cease to be an individual?
No, I love that question. And like the thing that comes up for me is just like immediately as you asked that, I kept feeling, oh my gosh, I remember in moments when people were actively dying. And it's like a lot of the time I can feel the ancestral and generational ancestors, right? And their relatives that are like around. There's such a weird shift that happens when somebody's actively dying. And there's so many books and research and people talking about like, yeah, what are the last things you think that people have said or see? And a lot of the time they're like, oh my gosh, that's my aunt, or like, that's my grandma. I think of how we have grown as a society to feel like we're all individuals and we're like,
we're not connected.
I feel like we're not connected at all. And I just think like, it goes back into a lot of patriarchy and colonization. But I just feel like as a whole, it's almost like you are in the web now. And so it's not just an I, it's a we. And that's something that, like, I love that you asked that question, because I feel like now as a society, we're starting to realize how deep ritual and ceremony is, especially when somebody is dying and passing.
Yeah.
And it feels like you get to be with all of the ancestors and all of the generations before you and after you. And so I feel like, I keep seeing this spider web as you were talking about that. And it's like the individual themselves, sure, there are like moments where you're like, this is what they were into. But then when you see everything, it's kind of like, this is why they did what they did or liked what they liked, because it was also past wisdom of who came before them. And that's something that I've kind of been like sitting with, is how many of us right now, right, like in real time right now, are doing all of these things and trying to create all of these things that our ancestors couldn't do or had wanted to do, but like right now in real time, we're able to do it. And so I feel like it pays respect in a way of like, well, now you're in that history, even if your body has died, of this energy exchange, whether or not, you see it or not with the person that has died, but it just feels like you're enveloped in your ancestry.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with what you're talking about is, I think, like you said, patriarchy and, capitalism, all those things. I think especially capitalism feeds off of like making us feel separate, making us feel alone. Like, I think that is very much a part of that. I think that's different than just the experience of being an individual, right? Like, we are all individuals, all experiencing our own thing. Like, we don't really have a way. I mean, I think maybe there's ways that you can maybe tap into more connectedness or whatever, but by and large, your experience is yours alone and nothing else. And we go back to this kind of like connectedness, this, this web. I think it's almost impossible for us to like really comprehend what that means, because we don't have a way of comprehending an experience more than just ourselves. You're saying Western mind still has this like very like materialistic scientific view of, but I can't prove that.
Totally.
There's no like data or like facts and figures. So like
science.
it's there's that balancing act of like, but I can't prove it.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying. And it's just when I like go back into like primitive times, right?
Yeah.
And kind of just like examine how people are like trying to figure some stuff out. It's like the intuition that we all innately have that has just been so almost like capitalized and colonized in a way where it's like we as a being can't really feel the things because we've brought up into, X, Y, and Z. And I think that it just goes back into like moments where way back in the day where people are like, how do they come up with this idea of like electricity or like making something? And it's just, it goes back into intuition. Or why can't science and like the intuitive body exist? Like, why does it have to be one or the other? And I think that it's so vast, life and the universe is so vast that it's just hard for me to kind of sit with somebody just being like, oh no, like they're dead. You're not going to feel them. You're not going to see them. They're just like dead.
Yeah.
And they're going back into the earth or something like that. Like that to me is like, but then you have like an example. Somebody has a baby and they just lost their dad, and there's personality traits and even just like spitting images of the person that has died. I don't know. There's something there where I'm like, this is more than just what is black and white. And I feel like a lot of us now are kind of realizing more of not just even the gray parts of it, but like the colorful parts that we forgot existed.
Yeah. I'm curious with that kind of like example that you brought up, like, are there layers of it that you like reincarnation is something that is, I don't know if on the table is the right way of phrasing that, but is that something that you could kind of like get in line with a little bit of like kind of energetically and coming back?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting because that first impactful death that happened to me, being that age and being from like a Filipino background, like my entire family didn't know how to hold my grief. And that was something of like why I went into the work that I do now. But I
was going to say, sorry to cut you off, but like from our conversations, you do work in the death industry.
Or, I mean, yeah. Like I do a lot of death and grief work, and I facilitate a lot. Yeah.
So it's something that you're very familiar with. Maybe I feel like I just wanted to like maybe bring that to like the attention of the listeners. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was like, yeah, maybe that's like some important context to some extent.
No, I love that. And it just so much of my story stems from I'm basically allowing myself to reparent myself to be what I needed when I was a child in deep grief. When that had happened, I remember vividly being in the libraries, checking out like death books, and reincarnation was a huge topic. And that to me, like it resonates with my cellular structure. If somebody was like, oh yeah, I believe in reincarnation, I'm like, yeah, I'm on that train too. And it was interesting just even as a child to feel, her name was Kat's presence in nature and in food for sure. But there's something to be said, because currently I'm in the throes of my older brother's grief. And one of the things that I was also his caretaker and his death doula.
That had to be hard. Not easy.
It's like another level that I'm still kind of going to the archives of like what has just happened. And it's been really interesting. There was at one point, so I've seen a lot of people in active dying, a lot of animals in active dying. And everything that I had seen prior to my brother's death was like very textbook. But when my brother had died, this guy was in active dying like 3 times before he actually died.
Ooh.
And it got to the point where like the second time he like popped back up. He's like an Aquarius, so he's very, and he's an Aquarius sun, and then he has a Cancer moon. So he's very, very loving. And, you know, the entire time when he would pop back up, he was like, oh, sorry, guys. Is dad comfortable? Can we get mom a chair? And I was like, are you kidding me, man? Like, what is happening here?
That does sound like obviously I know this isn't like premeditated or anything, but that is something that like I would probably do to fuck with my sister a little bit. Be like, just kidding.
Oh my God.
Psych.
Yes. And there's just like moments with my brother where, you know, he was born on Groundhog's Day, and every time he went into active dying, it was like Groundhog's Day. And I just remember I got to the point because he died on our dad's birthday, which is the day after Christmas.
That's my birthday.
And then my birthday. Oh my gosh. Oh, Boxing Day. I love that.
The worst birthday.
But, gosh, I know. It's like, what are we going to get? Are we going to get presents or, okay, everything's the same.
Yeah.
I feel that because my birthday is New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And
it's just a bad time of year to have a birthday.
Like, I know. I was like, come on. So I will celebrate half birthdays. So like July 1st.
That's a hard time to have a death.
My brother. Oh God, I know. And I had known, like I had felt that he was waiting for our dad's birthday. And so like the second time he had died, my sister had come into town. We were like, and we have another brother, but it was my sister, my brother, and I had just dosed him morphine. And well, so he's 8 years older than me. And he was the sibling where when I was like getting into like edibles or just like hallucinogens, anything, he'd be my partner. He'd be like my partner in crime.
Oh, nice.
And
You need a partner in crime for that.
Exactly. And like, who better than your big brother?
Totally.
And him and I just have like that womb energy, where we could just like telepathically be like, I see where you're at. You're like just going for it. And I was dosing him his morphine. And I was like, all right, a little for you. And then he looked at me. He's like, a little for you. I was like, okay, a little for me.
All right.
And my sister, my big sister, she's like, gosh, you guys always do this. And it was just so funny. But everything that he was seeing, I was saying. And everything I was saying, he was seeing. And before we put him in hospice, I had this really vivid dream. And it was like he recited this entire time where he was in hospice. So we put him in hospice December 13th, Friday the 13th, and then he had died the 26th. So there were like in the in-between, he was basically reciting this dream that I had. And the very like last thing that he had said to me cognizantly was part of my dream, like the end of the dream.
Whoa.
And when him and I, it was crazy. When him and I were like in it, I just did a little bit, but I said, how will I know? And then he started laughing and he was like, you talk to the dead all the time. And I was like, look, dude, like you will be able to tell me though, like you will be able to say. And he said, you'll find me in the sky. You'll see me in fruit. You'll see me in your snacks. And I was like, I need more like, what do you mean in the sky? Because him and I were like really big alien advocates and believers. And he said specifically in green. And green was his color. And when he had died, there started to be auroras. And they were green. And on my birthday, I have goosebumps. And I know, it was so good. I documented everything that had been going on. And that was one of the things my brother had said. He was like, look, I had just closed my restaurant. So my background is like being a restaurateur and chef. And I had closed the restaurant and immediately was like really deep into this work. And when it was my birthday, it was like my first birthday without my brother. I was feeling all the feelings. And that night, everyone was texting me that had heard these stories that Al was like, yeah, he's going to be in the sky in green. And that was the forecast of when the auroras were crazy, like everywhere in the world.
That's wild.
And so I was getting all of, these beautiful pictures. And I went outside and I looked, and when I was just talking to the sky, I was just talking to my brother and could really see this deep green. Like, hey girl, remember that one time we were on morphine together? Well, it's coming around. And so, there were things that he had said to me specifically as we were planning what to do after he had died. One of the things that he had asked me to do was have 3 parties. And of course, like I was like, oh yeah, we're going to have 3 parties. It is so heartbreaking to have 3 parties.
I'm sure.
But it worked out. Like he had died on the 26th. We did his viewing in January, which after his viewing that same night, auroras. And then we did his funeral, which what happened after auroras. And
That's
then
so crazy.
We just recently, it was nuts. We had his burial about 2 weeks ago. And there wasn't any auroras, but it was so rainy that for the moment that he had asked me if I could do a scene from an 80s movie, like the one with John Cusack, where he's like holding that thing. And so I had done it.
That's awesome.
I had done the thing. And before that, it just like it completely downpoured and then it chilled out. And then after like having a whole week in Juneau where there's just so much rain, that time he got buried, that night we went back just to see, how the ground was. And it was just complete sun right on him and my aunt and my grandma. And I was like, okay, these aren't auroras, but I see these greens, just everything lit up. So I feel like my experience with, the afterlife is so different because I had threatened my brother so many times, like, please haunt me, you
Yeah.
know,
That's
or
awesome.
at least show me.
Yeah.
And
Give me some
yeah,
signs.
yeah, give me some signs. When I hold death cafes, I have a lot of people that will go back into sharing about their experiences with their loved ones. And it always has something to do with nature and food. And that's been really fascinating, you know, to know that piece of a person is dying, a person is dead, their body's going back into the earth, essentially, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, yeah, I think of the primitive times and all of the ceremonies all over the world. And, you know, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think this is also an interesting thing too. I'm on the board of the End of Life Alliance here in Alaska. And there are so many ways right now to be cremated or like aquamation, not just like getting buried. And I think it's so interesting.
Human composting is one of my new favorite ones.
Yes, that's funny. If you look on my Instagram right now, that's exactly what's happened. And of course, like Auburn, Washington, like that's so rad.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love that in this experience that, like, I don't know, I think one of the big issues is like we don't talk about death because, you know, it's scary and all this stuff, whatnot. But it's like, you know, you were with your brother as he's dying and you are having these beautiful moments and like are able to like joke and laugh and like, and I'm sure cry and be sad, like all the emotions. I think there's a part of death that gets forgotten. There is also this like connection with, maybe it's like you're saying, you know, like your ancestors, your family. Cause like when my grandpa died, that was kind of that's definitely the only death I've been around where like I was there, you know, when he passed. And then that night it was like my mom, my grandma, my uncle, my cousins, we were just like all sitting around. We were like some of us on the floor, you know, some in chairs around his like bed, you know, in the hospice center or whatever it was. And just like sharing stories, you know, about grandpa. And I do love that like death does allow for those moments too, for like familial connection and all that stuff, which I think is super powerful too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, 1,000%. And I love the connectiveness of, okay, I'm the gal that when somebody has died, you know, I'll put the fun in funeral because I'll be the person to like share a story to kind of get the ball rolling. It's always really like just endearing and profound when you share a story and the family members or the daughters or, you know, the close family members to the person had no idea about that with the person.
Oh, I bet that's awesome.
So I think, I love what you had just shared, because I think that in the realms of dying and death, it takes us back to our ancestors and the people that were like, wait, I like, tell us more, say more.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it gives us that invitation to, especially like my parents are late 70s. And before my brother got diagnosed last year, I had taken them to go to my dad's favorite uncle. And watching your parents grieve is a whole other can of worms. But then to allow them to kind of be witnessed in that way, because they didn't know how to deal with my grief. And at this point, I knew it was happening. But to be able to witness your parents and like even siblings and allowing them to like have conversation about it has been really interesting. And I think about how death shifts so much, right, of mortality and like our thought process of like, how are we going to live now?
Yeah.
And
I think there is such a huge thing with talking about death and thinking about death that actually makes you live with more intention. I wouldn't have closed my photography business and not known what I was going to do next if I wasn't thinking about death so much. I would have been like, oh, I need to figure out, I need to have a plan, you know, like all this stuff. And it's like, plans don't really work out ever. Like take a risk and like, it's going to work out. You're going to find something. And I know there's so many people that I've met doing this project that are like working on like, hey, we need to talk about death so that when people are dying, It's easier. I love that. But I also think if we start talking about death, you can actually get people to start living more fully now. And I think that'll bloom out into like a greater appreciation for when people are dying. I think it's like twofold. And so I think that is a huge thing is like, yeah, like when you see death, when you think about it, it does create urgency of, I only get to do this once, at least in this vessel, most likely, unless this is some weird sick game where we just come back and do the exact same life over and over and over again.
Yeah, I love all this. And, I resonate with so much of what you're saying. And like one of the things that I really loved with what you are doing and what you've been creating is that I have been asked to be on like different podcasts for more of like paranormal things or like, my intuitive sense of just like clairvoyancy, clairaudient, all of this stuff. So I have like a slew of stories, but when I had talked to this podcast that I love, they like wanted to do something about my restaurant, but then it ended up going into like my experience with my brother. And when I had heard back from them, they were like, we love this and we want to try to figure out how to do this. But the theme is, it's pretty heavy. And I just sat there for a second in my car and I just was like, this is the thing about this with what I had experienced is that everybody that I am going to see when I step out of this car is going to experience some sort of death and we are all going to die. So not being able to like be like, wow, like I get, it's not as paranormal, even though I like had felt my ancestors, there was something there to be had because it was like, I've seen it so many times with so many clients and so many friends and family and strangers where when a person is actively dying or when a person gets news that they have this disease or a person is trying to like deal or pretend that somebody that they love isn't dying, that is more in fear and in just this, unknown. But it's like, these are the stories that need to be cataloged because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's a clear fact. One of the few clear facts that we have.
Yeah, we are all going to die and the people that we love are going to die. And I'm such an advocate for talking about an advanced care plan and like, what does that look like to be able to have discernment and also be able to create what you would like. Yeah. As you're dying, after you're dying, I just, as a death doula, I will facilitate and like show the family like, okay, you can do this, but like legally, I don't partake in that. But being a part of my brothers, it was like, I wish that people could see how beautiful this is. And, I had talked to my brother about like, hey, what do you want to do after you die? And I was like, do you want to do like a visual or we could do a sitting visual? And we had come up with a playlist and I was like, how long do you want your body to be like here? And what do you want to wear? All of these things. And so we broke it down and I was like, hey, I have to go grab some ice packs to put in your freezer. And he was like, no. There's like my favorite chicken in there, which is like that, this what is it? It's like banquet chicken and these beautiful blueberries that he picked last summer with his family. Guess what I did? Guess what made him cold? Like,
that's so amazing.
I'm doing these things. Yeah. And it's just like being able to have that part of like what your family gets to do and remember. Yeah. And I know that my family was probably terrified. Like I haven't asked them yet, but they were like, what are you going to do with that chicken? What are you doing with that ice cream? And I was like, yeah, just keeping him cold. He'll be fine. But
it's also going to be dinner, just so you know. We're going to have, we're going to have some chicken right and some ice cream with some blueberries on it.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back into this cycle too. That's really beautiful because my mom, she was a RN nurse for the longest time. And it's like to watch her bathe, like we all bathed my brother. And even in the midst of it, like even after death, there was still consent of like, hey, your wife and mom are going to do this. Is that cool? And he's like, yeah, sure. I want those boxers. It's like a wonderful thing that, you know, is a lot, but is so beautiful. And after he had died, one of the things that I had asked the mortician was like, can I be there for embalming? And I've seen a lot of bodies be embalmed, but to witness that, like to witness my brother's vessel, right? He had gone through like 13 rounds of chemo.
Ugh.
And he was 43. And there are so many layers in that, and to like watch what his body was doing or had kept in his system, that was a whole other aspect of like death to me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's just I also think of my ego had also died along with him. Like parts of my ego, I thought I love ego death. I love it, but like I had no idea. Like thinking, oh yeah, like I have my death doula hat on, but this is my first time being a little sister, right?
Yeah.
And like caretaking. It's like if I didn't know what I knew, it would have gone haywire. I don't think he would have been able to like bounce back into his body again after those 3 times. And there's moments in when he was actively dying where I had prepped him into breath work. And at one point in one of his times of dying, our entire family was humming and singing "You Are My Sunshine," and then breathing with him. And I was playing the sound bowls, and that motherfucker woke back up and was like, hey, I want a roasted chicken with sauteed carrots and some fresh rice. And I was just,
You're
I
like,
was
this
done.
was
like,
going to be the
like,
perfect
who
moment.
Is this? God damn it. I was like, you could have just, but yeah. And so it's just kind of funny to think this part of my experience with my brothers dying. There are so many other stories that I have known that people have shared that do have humor and life and, you know, of course, deep sadness and pain. But it's just like if people allowed themselves to receive and surrender into, you know, our mortality, something would shift. Collectively, something would definitely shift.
I want at some point I probably need to like make some merch or something, but like,
oh yeah,
it just like clicked in my brain, like surrender to your mortality is like such a great line. Like that is such a beautiful
send
thing.
Me the crew sweatshirt. Of that.
You'll definitely get one. But yeah, it's like I love
it.
I love that thought of just like surrender to your mortality because we all have to. That's beautiful.
We all have to.
And I'm so glad that
Thank
you randomly found my project and like we were able to do this call. You know, I loved talking about what you think happens when we die, but I really, really loved what you said and just your willingness to share kind of your experience with your brother. Like that couldn't have been an easy experience. And I'm just so thankful that you were willing to share it because I thought it was beautiful. And I love, like you were just saying, there are so many beautiful moments and like laughing and all this stuff that happen in it. It's like, it is so innately human. Yeah. It is the like essence of life in those moments, I think, of like truly what it boils down to. And we get outside of all the bullshit of social media and phones and ego and, you know, all this stuff and just like have these beautiful, beautiful moments. So I just want to thank you. And I'm so glad that we did this and we'll definitely have to stay in touch. And yeah. All right. Take care.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
To wrap this episode up and to set the stage a little bit, some of you already know this about me, but I used to work in the photography industry. Recently, we lost someone in the community, someone many of you knew and loved. I only found out a few days ago that she was an avid listener of this podcast and that it brought her some comfort as she grieved the loss of both of her parents. I'm so honored to be able to share these stories with you, and knowing that even one person found solace here means the world to me. I want to take a moment of silence now in remembrance of her and of anyone you might be grieving. Thank you for holding that space with me. And thank you, as always, for being here. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space. Space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. If a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share what you believe happens when we die. Listener support makes this podcast possible. You can now join with a premium subscription for early access to episodes, or with a monthly contribution. Either way, your support helps me keep sharing these stories. You'll find links to both in the show notes, and as always, please like, share, and follow. Anything helps. Until next time, have a good life.